Margaret Blake stood in the center of the enormous chamber and tried not to feel small. The Galactic Council Hall was larger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. Hundreds of alien creatures filled the space around her, sitting on platforms that floated at different heights. Some of the aliens looked almost normal, with arms and legs and heads. Others were just clouds of gas held inside glass bubbles. A few glowed with their own light. She smoothed down her black jacket and waited. Her assistant, Robert Hayes, stood 3 steps behind her. He looked as nervous as she felt. Today was important. After 3 years of meetings and negotiations, humanity was finally being accepted as a full member of the Galactic Council. Margaret had prepared for weeks. She knew what questions they would ask. She had all her answers ready on her datapad. A voice filled the chamber. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with clicking sounds, but her translator earpiece turned it into clear English. The speaker was a being called Thomas, though that was not its real name. Thomas looked like a cluster of purple crystals floating in the air, with lights blinking inside. "Ambassador Blake," Thomas said. "Welcome to the Galactic Council. We are pleased to accept humanity into our community." "Thank you, Speaker Thomas," Margaret replied. Her voice echoed in the vast space. "As is our custom, we must record your species information for our historical archives. This helps us understand each member civilization. May we proceed?" "Of course. First question. How long has your species possessed faster-than-light travel?" Margaret glanced at her notes, though she had memorized this answer. 73 years, as of last month. Pleasant sounds rippled through the chamber. Several aliens bobbed in what might have been approval. "Good, good," Thomas said. The lights inside its crystal body pulsed with a warm golden color. "And how long has humanity had powered spaceflight in general?" "Approximately 250 years, Margaret answered. She felt proud saying it. 2.5 centuries of reaching for the stars. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens started chittering, whistling, and making sounds her translator could not even process. The peaceful atmosphere shattered in an instant. Several beings rose from their seats. Others huddled together, their limbs or tentacles or whatever they had moving frantically. Margaret looked back at Robert. He shrugged, his eyes wide with confusion. "Order!" Thomas called out. The warm golden light inside its crystals had turned cold blue. "Order in the chamber." The noise slowly died down. "Ambassador Blake," Thomas said, and now its voice sounded strained. "Please confirm. Did you say 250 years?" "Yes," Margaret said slowly. "Our first powered aircraft flew in 1903. Our first orbital spaceflight was in 1961. Our first faster-than-light ship launched in 1952. Why? Is something wrong?" "How long," Thomas asked, ignoring her question, "has your species existed?" Margaret frowned. What a strange thing to ask. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have existed for about 300,000 years. Though our ancestors go back even further. Nobody made a sound. The silence was worse than the noise had been. Hundreds of alien beings simply stared at her. She could feel the weight of their attention pressing down like a physical thing. A massive creature in the front row rose slowly from its seat. It looked like an enormous crab, taller than a man, with too many legs and eye stalks that waved in the air. Margaret recognized it as Dr. Shell, a Krell scientist. The Krell had been humanity's first contact with alien life. "Speaker Thomas," Dr. Shell said, its voice deep and rumbling. "I request permission to question the human delegation." "Granted." All of Dr. Shell's eye stalks focused on Margaret at once. "Ambassador Blake, please check your numbers. Perhaps there was an error in translation. Perhaps your years are measured differently than ours." "No error," Margaret said firmly. "Earth years. Standard solar orbits around our sun. 300,000 of them." "Impossible," Dr. Shell whispered. "I assure you, our fossil records and genetic testing are very clear." "You do not understand." Another alien stood up, this one more humanoid in shape. It had silver skin and 4 arms. Margaret knew this one was called Grace, a luminoid ambassador. "Ambassador Blake, most spacefaring species advance from basic tool use to faster-than-light travel in 800 to 2000 years. That is normal. That is how the universe works." Margaret felt her heart start to beat faster. "Most species." "All species," Grace said. Her 4 hands gripped the railing in front of her. "There are no exceptions. Species evolve quickly and reach the stars, or they die. The galaxy does not give second chances. The Vex 3 are the eldest known civilization, Thomas added. Its crystals were now pulsing dark purple. We achieved spaceflight 3,400 years after we developed farming. We were considered extremely slow. Robert stepped forward. Wait. You're telling us that most species go from caves to spaceships in less than 2,000 years? Yes, Dr. Shell confirmed. It is one of the fundamental laws of sapient development. Quick advancement or extinction. There is no middle path. Margaret's mouth felt dry. But humans took over 10,000 years just to get from farming to spaceflight. And you spent nearly 300,000 years before that, Grace said quietly. Using simple tools. Living in small groups. You should not exist. No species like you has ever existed in all our recorded history. Maybe we're just slow? Robert offered. No. Thomas's crystals went completely black. You misunderstand what we are saying. Ambassador Blake, we need to know everything about your history. Every disaster. Every close call. Every time your species nearly went extinct. Why? Margaret demanded. Her hands were shaking. Because, Dr. Shell said, if what you are telling us is true, humanity has survived at least 6 great filters. That is 6 times more than any known spacefaring species. Including the Vexthery. What is a great filter? Margaret asked. An extinction event, Grace answered. The universe is full of them. Ice ages. Asteroid strikes. Solar flares. Supervolcano eruptions. Diseases. And species only survive 1, maybe 2 if they are very lucky. But 6. She shook her head. Impossible. Thomas spoke again, and its voice made the air vibrate. We need to know how you survived, Ambassador Blake. Because every 50,000 years, something visits our galaxy. Something that destroys civilizations. It came last 4 to 7,000 years ago, before any of us existed. Only ruins remain from that time. The crystal being pulsed once, sharp and blood red. And it is coming back soon. Margaret sat in a small private chamber off the main council hall. The room was designed for humans, with normal chairs and a table, though the walls still glowed with that strange alien light. Robert sat beside her, his face pale. Across from them sat Dr. Shell, Ambassador Grace, and a holographic projection of Speaker Thomas. Let us start simply, Dr. Shell said, adjusting its massive body in the specially reinforced chair. Tell us about your most recent near-extinction event. Margaret pulled up her datapad. Her hands were still shaking slightly. The most recent would be the Cold War. From roughly 1947 to 1991. We came very close to nuclear war. Twice we were within minutes of launching weapons that would have destroyed most life on Earth. Grace's silver skin seemed to lose color. You had weapons that could destroy your own planet. Yes. We built thousands of them. And you almost used them? On yourselves? Yes. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Robert cleared his throat. Should I mention that we still have those weapons? We just agreed not to use them quite so much. This is not helpful, Lieutenant, Margaret muttered. Thomas's crystals flickered through several colors before settling on deep blue. Before that, what other events? Margaret scrolled through her notes. World War II, 1939 to 1945. Approximately 85 million deaths. Before that, World War I, 1914 to 1918. About 20 million deaths. The Spanish flu pandemic killed 50 million around the same time. Your species fights itself? Grace asked. While also dying from disease. Frequently, yes. How do you survive this? Margaret shrugged helplessly. We just keep going. We rebuild. We have children. We try again. Dr. Shell leaned forward. Go back further. Before your industrial age. The Black Death, Margaret read. A plague in the 1300s. Killed perhaps half the population of Europe. Before that, countless smaller plagues, famines, and wars. The Mongol invasions. The fall of Rome. The Bronze Age collapse where multiple civilizations just vanished. And your species continued, Thomas said quietly. Yes. Go back to the beginning. When did your species nearly die completely? Margaret found a section on ancient history. About 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted. Mount Toba. It nearly wiped us out. Genetic evidence suggests the entire human population dropped to maybe 10,000 individuals. Some scientists think it might have been as low as 3,000. The room went silent. 3,000, Grace finally said. Your entire species. 3,000 individuals. And we survived, Robert added. Obviously. How? Dr. Shell demanded. With 3,000 individuals, genetic diversity collapses. Disease spreads instantly. Any small disaster ends everything. Margaret looked at the alien scientist. We scattered. Small groups spread across Africa and Asia. We used everything we could find. We ate anything that would not kill us. We lived in caves, in trees, on beaches. We adapted. For how long? Thousands of years. We were nearly extinct for thousands of years. Thomas's entire crystal structure pulsed red. This is not possible. No species survives a bottleneck that severe. The mathematics do not work. And yet here we are, Margaret said. Grace stood up and began pacing on her 4 legs. Her 4 arms gestured wildly. Tell me about your planet. Your Earth. What is it like? Beautiful, Robert said. Oceans, mountains, forests, deserts. And disasters? Grace pressed. What tries to kill you? Margaret thought for a moment. Ice ages. We have had several. Hurricanes. Tornadoes. Earthquakes. Volcanic eruptions. Tsunamis. Droughts. Floods. Wildfires. Your planet is trying to kill you, Grace said flatly. Sort of, yes. But it is also home. Dr. Shell pulled up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air showing graphs and charts. I have been studying your history since your arrival 3 years ago. I did not believe the timeline was accurate. I thought there were errors in your dating methods. But you are telling me this is all correct? Yes. Then look at this. The display changed to show a timeline with red markers. Each red marker is a potential extinction event. Asteroid impacts that you call near misses. Solar flares that could have destroyed your technology. Ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. Volcanic winters. Magnetic pole reversals. The timeline was covered in red markers. Dozens of them. Any one of these should have ended you, Dr. Shell said. But you survived them all. We are stubborn, Margaret offered. This is beyond stubbornness. This is impossible. Thomas spoke up. Tell me about your technology development. Why did it take so long? Margaret set down her data pad. We got stuck. We would build something, a civilization, and then it would collapse. Disease, war, climate change, invasion. We would lose knowledge. Books burned. Libraries destroyed. People forgot how to build things. Then we would have to start over. How many times? Grace asked. Starting over completely? At least a dozen major civilizations rose and fell before the current era. Probably more that we do not know about. And each time you started over, you survived. Yes. Robert leaned back in his chair. I think I see what is bothering you all. We are not special. We are not super advanced. We are just really, really hard to kill. Dr. Shell's eye stalks all swiveled to focus on the young lieutenant. That is exactly what bothers us. Grace stopped pacing. Ambassador Blake, do you know why species advance quickly or die? You said it was a universal law. It is a necessary strategy. The galaxy is dangerous. Resources are limited. Species that develop slowly face too many chances for extinction. They encounter one great filter and they die. Quick advancement is survival. You reach the stars before the next disaster strikes. But we did not do that, Margaret said. No. You did not. You faced disaster after disaster. You nearly died dozens of times. But you never actually died. You survived things that should have destroyed you 10 times over. Thomas's crystals brightened. There is a word in our language. It does not translate well. It means something like persistence beyond reason. Survival beyond logic. Refusing to die when death is certain. What is the word? Robert asked. We do not have sounds that your vocal cords can produce. But perhaps your species needs a name for this quality, because you have it more than any being we have ever encountered. Margaret felt a strange mix of pride and fear. Is that good or bad? We do not know yet, Dr. Shell admitted. But we are about to find out. Because the danger I mentioned, the one that comes every 50,000 years, it is called the silence. It sweeps through the galaxy and destroys everything advanced enough to notice. When does it come? Margaret asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know. Our best calculations say within the next 300 years. Maybe sooner. Grace sat back down heavily. The last time the silence came, humans already existed. You were primitive, yes. Living in caves with stone tools. But you were there. Margaret understood. And we survived it. Yes. While every advanced civilization in the galaxy was destroyed, humanity sat in caves and survived. You did not even know it happened. Robert laughed, though it sounded slightly hysterical. So you want us to teach you how to survive by hiding in caves? 3 months after the council meeting, Earth received its first large-scale alien visitors. Not diplomats or traders, but scientists. Dozens of them. They came in ships that hung in orbit like small moons, and they came with one purpose: to understand how humanity refused to die. Dr. Shell led the expedition. The massive Krell scientist stood in the middle of a dig site in East Africa, watching human archaeologists carefully brush dirt away from ancient bones. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Shell had required special cooling equipment just to survive the heat. This is where it began. Shell asked. Dr. Emily Ross, the lead archaeologist, nodded. She was a small woman with sun-darkened skin and dirt under her fingernails. This is one of the sites, yes. Bones dating back almost 200,000 years. Early humans. They lived here, hunted here, died here. And survived here, Shell added. That too. A luminoid scientist named Peter walked over, his 4 arms holding various scanning devices. The aliens had adopted human names to make communication easier, though their real names were sounds humans could not produce. The volcanic ash layer is clearly visible, Peter said, pointing at the exposed wall of the excavation. From the Toba eruption. 74,000 years ago. Emily nodded. Everything died. Plants, animals, most of the megafauna. The world went dark for years. Temperatures dropped. It was a volcanic winter that lasted decades. How many humans were alive before this? Shell asked. Maybe 100,000. Possibly more. We cannot be certain. And after? As few as 3,000. Maybe 10,000 if we are generous. Peter's silver skin darkened. That is genetic death. That is the end of a species. Should have been, Emily agreed. She climbed out of the dig site and dusted off her hands. But here we are. Those few thousand people somehow survived. They scattered into small groups. They found shelter. They ate anything they could find. Insects, roots, fish from streams. They adapted. Shell looked across the African plains. In the distance, acacia trees dotted the landscape. This land is harsh. It is. But it is also rich if you know where to look. Our ancestors knew. They had been living here for thousands of years before Toba. They knew every plant, every animal, every water source. When the volcano erupted halfway across the world, they survived because they knew their home. Knowledge saved them, Peter said thoughtfully. Knowledge and stubbornness, Emily corrected. They could have given up. They could have stopped having children, stopped trying. But they did not. Another alien joined them, this one a floating crystalline being similar to Speaker Thomas. Its name was Daniel, and it pulsed with curious green light. I have completed the genetic analysis of the human samples you provided. The bottleneck event is clearly visible in your DNA. Every human alive today descends from that tiny surviving population. We carry the near extinction in our genes, Emily said. Yes. But something else is visible too. Extreme genetic diversity compared to other species. You should have less diversity after such a bottleneck, not more. It is as if your species deliberately preserved variation. Emily smiled. We bred with anyone we found. Early humans mixed with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and probably other human species we have not discovered yet. We took genes from everyone. We were not picky. Survival through mixture, Daniel mused. Fascinating. Over the following weeks, the alien scientists visited dozens of sites across Earth. They went to volcanic regions, to ancient cities, to battlefields, to hospitals. They wanted to see everything that had tried to kill humanity. In Iceland, they stood at the edge of a massive volcanic crater. A human volcanologist named James explained how the Laki eruption in 1783 had nearly caused a famine that would have killed millions across Europe. But we survived, James said, throwing a rock into the crater. We ate bark. We ate grass. We ate anything. And we lived. In Japan, they visited Hiroshima. A historian named Catherine walked them through the Peace Museum, showing pictures of the nuclear destruction. 140,000 people died, she said quietly. The city was destroyed in seconds. But look outside. They walked out of the museum. The city stretched around them, modern and bustling with life. Buildings reached toward the sky. People walked the streets, lived, laughed, worked. We rebuilt, Catherine said. We always rebuild. Grace, the luminoid ambassador, touched one of the memorial stones with a gentle hand. You were attacked with atomic weapons. By your own species. And you rebuilt in the same place. This is our home, Catherine said simply. We do not abandon home. In Geneva, they met with medical researchers who explained every plague and pandemic humanity had survived. Smallpox, influenza, cholera, AIDS, COVID-19. The list went on and on. Dr. Richard Chen, a virologist, showed them graphs and charts. We lose people to disease. Millions of people. But we adapt. We develop immunity. We create vaccines. We learn. You use your own dead as lessons, Shell observed. Yes. Every death teaches us something. We remember what killed us, and we prepare for it to come back. The alien scientists gathered each evening to compare their findings. They met in a temporary facility built near the United Nations building in New York. Hundreds of researchers from dozens of species, all trying to understand one impossible thing, human survival. Dr. Shell addressed the assembly one night. We have studied their history for 3 months. We have seen their dig sites, their museums, their memorials. We have analyzed their genetics, their culture, their technology. And I believe I understand now. The room fell silent. Humanity does not survive because they are strong. They are not particularly strong. They do not survive because they are smart. Many species are smarter. They survive because they refuse to accept death. Peter stood up. What does that mean? It means they cheat, Shell said. When the volcano erupts, they dig holes and hide. When the ice comes, they follow the herd south. When plague strikes, they isolate the sick and care for them anyway. When war comes, they fight, yes, but they also surrender, flee, hide, negotiate, anything to keep living. They have no pride about survival. They will do anything, no matter how desperate or undignified. Daniel's crystals pulsed. They adapt without shame. Exactly. And they remember. Every disaster is recorded. Every death is mourned. Every solution is preserved. They build their culture on the bones of failure. Emily, who had been invited to observe, spoke up. We have a saying. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We remember everything. Every mistake. Every tragedy. We teach it to our children so they will not make the same errors. Grace looked at the human archaeologist. Is this why you dig up the dead? To remember? Yes. We dig up our ancestors to honor them. To learn from them. To understand what they survived so we can survive what comes next. Shell's eye stalks waved slowly. Then there is hope for us after all. If humanity can teach us to remember, to adapt, to refuse death with such determination, perhaps we can survive the silence. Perhaps, Emily said. But first you need to understand something else about humans. What? She smiled, but it was not a happy smile. The Galactic Council War Room was nothing like the Grand Assembly Chamber. It was deep inside the station, protected by layers of shielding and security. The walls showed star maps and data streams that updated constantly. Red warnings blinked across multiple displays. Margaret stood with Robert, both of them looking small among the gathered aliens. Speaker Thomas floated at the center of the room, its crystals dim and gray. Around them stood military commanders from a dozen species, all watching the displays with growing concern. Show them, Thomas said quietly. Dr. Shell moved to the main display. The holographic image shifted to show the galaxy from above, a beautiful spiral of stars and light. But at the edge, something was wrong. The stars were going dark. This is the galactic rim, Shell explained. The outer edge of our galaxy. 3 weeks ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected anomalies. Stars disappearing from sensors. Communication blackouts. Ships vanishing. How many ships? Margaret asked. 47. All different species. All gone without a trace. Robert leaned forward. What is causing it? We do not know. But we have seen this pattern before. Shell changed the image. Now it showed ancient star maps, thousands of years old. These are records from the last civilization cycle. Before any of us existed. They left warning beacons, ruins, and these maps. The old maps showed the same pattern. Darkness spreading from the galactic rim inward, like a wave of extinction. They called it the silence, Grace said from across the room. Her forearms were crossed tightly. Because everything it touches goes silent. No signals. No light. Nothing. How often does it come? Robert asked. Every 50,000 years, give or take a few centuries. The last visit was 4 to 7,000 years ago. Margaret felt cold despite the warm room. So it is early? Or our calculations were wrong, Thomas admitted. We have been preparing for 300 more years. We are not ready. A military commander from the Krell species stepped forward. His name was General Marcus, though his real name sounded like rocks grinding together. We have analyzed the old records. The silence is not a natural phenomenon. It is a weapon. Or a species. Or something else entirely. The previous civilizations never figured out what it was. They only knew it was coming. What did they do? Margaret asked. They tried to fight it. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy united. They built weapons. They prepared fleets. They created defensive networks across thousands of star systems. And they all died. Every single one. The only survivors were primitive species. Animals. Pre-industrial civilizations that the silence apparently ignored. The room was silent for a long moment. Robert spoke up, his voice uncertain. You said the last silence was 4 to 7,000 years ago? Yes. Humans existed then. We were around. Using stone tools, living in small groups, but we were there. We know, Shell said. That is why we are talking to you. Margaret looked at the star maps, at the spreading darkness. You think we survived it because we were primitive? Because we were not worth noticing. That is our theory, Grace said. The silence destroys technology. Civilizations. Cities. Anything advanced. But it leaves primitive life alone. When it came last time, your ancestors were in caves. They probably never even knew anything happened. They just kept living. So your plan is to hide? Robert asked. Go back to caves and wait for it to pass. That is one option we are considering, General Marcus admitted. Abandon our cities. Destroy our technology. Become primitive again and hope the silence ignores us. That is insane, Margaret said. You would throw away thousands of years of advancement? All your knowledge, your culture, your civilization. Better than extinction, Thomas said quietly. Margaret walked to the star map. She studied the pattern of darkness spreading through the outer rim. How fast is it moving? Current calculations suggest it will reach the core systems in 18 months. Maybe less. And you have known about this for how long? We have known the silence existed for 200 years, Shell said. We have known it was returning for 50 years. We have known it was coming soon for the last decade. And in all that time, no one figured out how to fight it. How do you fight something you do not understand? Something that destroyed every previous civilization. Margaret turned to face the assembled aliens. You asked us here because humans survived the last silence. But we did not survive through courage or strategy. We survived through ignorance. We did not even know it was happening. Yes, Thomas agreed. So what do you expect us to tell you? Grace stepped forward. We want to know how to survive like you do. How to persist. How to refuse to die even when death is certain. We told you already. We scatter. We hide. We adapt. We remember. But you also fight, Shell said. You told us that 3 months ago. When threatened, humans fight back. Margaret looked at Robert. He shrugged. She turned back to the aliens. You want us to tell you how to fight something that destroyed an entire galaxy of civilizations? Yes. She laughed, but it was not a happy sound. We have been in space for 73 years. You have had thousands of years to prepare. What makes you think we know something you do not? Because you are still alive, Thomas said simply. Every other species that faced multiple great filters died. You did not. You know something. Even if you do not know, you know it. Robert walked over to stand beside Margaret. Can we see the ruins? The ones left by the previous civilizations. Why? General Marcus asked. Because maybe they left clues. Maybe they figured something out before they died. And humans are good at one thing above all else. What is that? Learning from the dead. 3 days later, Margaret and Robert stood on a dead world. The planet had no name, only a catalog number. It orbited a dying star in a system long abandoned. The ruins covered the entire surface, towers and structures that had stood for 50,000 years. Dr. Shell and Grace accompanied them, along with a team of archaeologists and historians. They walked through streets where no one had walked for millennia. The buildings were intact but empty. No bodies. No artifacts. Nothing except the structures themselves. What happened to everyone? Robert asked. No one knows, Grace said. The silence does not leave bodies. People just vanish. Margaret touched one of the walls. It was smooth and cold. These buildings are still standing. Whatever the silence does, it does not destroy physically. No. It destroys life. Technology stops working. People disappear. But the structures remain. They walked deeper into the dead city. In what might have been a central plaza, they found something different. A monument. Covered in writing. Shell immediately began scanning it. This is a warning beacon. A message left for whoever came after. What does it say? Margaret asked. The translation took several minutes. When Shell spoke, its voice was somber. It says, we united too late. We fought as separate species. We did not trust each other. We kept secrets. We competed even as death surrounded us. If you receive this message, do not make our mistake. Trust each other. Share everything. Fight as one. It is your only chance. Margaret looked up at the empty towers reaching toward the sky. An entire civilization dead. All their knowledge, all their history, gone. And they left behind one message, trust each other. They failed because they did not cooperate, she said. Yes, Thomas's voice came through the communicator. The crystal being had remained on the ship. And we are already making the same mistake. Half the council wants to hide. The other half wants to fight. We cannot agree on anything. Margaret turned to face her companions. Then we need to teach you something else humans are good at. What? Coming together when we are scared. We fight each other constantly, yes. But when something threatens all of us, when extinction comes for everyone, we put aside our differences. We become one species. One people. One chance. Robert nodded. Pearl Harbor. September 11th. The asteroid deflection of 2084. When something threatens Earth, humans unite. Can you teach this to the council? Grace asked. Margaret looked at the dead city one more time. We can try. But first, we need to understand what we are really fighting. And I have a terrible feeling that to do that, we need to stop running from the silence. What do you mean? Shell asked. I mean we need to go toward it. We need to see what it actually is. Because you cannot fight an enemy you do not understand. 6 months had passed since the discovery on the dead world. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. But this time, the atmosphere was different. There was no chaos, no arguing. There was only grim determination. Margaret stood at the central podium again, but she was not alone. Behind her stood a mixed delegation of humans and aliens working together. Dr. Shell, Grace, Robert, Emily, and dozens of others who had spent months preparing for this moment. Honored Council, Margaret began. 6 months ago, you asked humanity to teach you how to survive. We have spent that time studying your history, your technology, and your plans. And we have concluded something important. She paused, letting her words sink in. You cannot fight the silence the way you have been planning. You cannot hide from it either. You need to do both. And you need to do something else entirely. Speaker Thomas's crystals pulsed with interest. Explain. Margaret gestured, and the display behind her lit up. It showed a complex network of plans and strategies. Humanity has survived for 300,000 years not because we were strong or smart. We survived because we planned for failure. We assumed the worst would happen, and we prepared for it. Dr. Shell stepped forward. We have worked with human strategists to develop what they call the human protocol. It is not one plan. It is hundreds of plans, all working together. Show us, a Vextory counselor demanded. The display changed. Now it showed various star systems highlighted in different colors. First, distribution, Margaret said. Every species will establish hidden colonies in remote systems. Small populations with everything needed to rebuild. If the silence destroys your homeworld, your species continues. We already have colonies, someone objected. Not like these, Robert spoke up. These will be completely hidden. No transmissions. No advanced technology signatures. They will appear primitive to any scan. The people living there will preserve knowledge, but live simply. Like humans did for thousands of years. Grace added, we will also establish orbital habitats disguised as asteroids and comets. Mobile populations that can drift through space undetected. If the silence tracks technology, we will hide our technology. That is the hiding part, another counselor said. What about fighting? Margaret nodded. We fight, but not the way you planned before. The previous civilizations tried to meet the silence head-on with fleets and weapons. They failed. So we will fight differently. The display showed a new image. Ships, but not warships. Something else. We call them seed ships, Emily explained. Each one carries genetic samples, cultural records, technology blueprints, and AI systems programmed to rebuild civilization. They will be launched in every direction. Thousands of them. If the silence destroys everything, these ships will continue into deep space. In 10,000 years, in 100,000 years, they will reach new galaxies and start over. We are planning to lose? Someone asked, horrified. We are planning to survive losing, Margaret corrected. There is a difference. Humans learned long ago that you do not just plan for victory. You plan for defeat, for disaster, for the absolute worst outcome. And then you make sure that even the worst outcome does not mean extinction. Shell brought up another image. We are also implementing information redundancy. Every piece of knowledge will be stored in multiple formats. Digital, physical, genetic. We will encode information into synthetic DNA and hide it in bacteria distributed across 1 million worlds. Even if every library burns, the knowledge survives. The previous civilization left one warning, Margaret said quietly. They told us to trust each other and work together. So that is what we will do. Every species will share their technology, their knowledge, their survival strategies. No secrets. No competition. We are one civilization now, facing one threat. Thomas's crystals brightened. You are asking species who have been rivals for centuries to share everything. Yes. Because the alternative is that we all die separately. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a Krell general stood up. I have fought in wars against half the species in this chamber. But I would rather fight beside them now than die alone. I support this protocol. One by one, other representatives stood. Some reluctantly, some eagerly, but they stood. The vote was not unanimous, but it was close enough. Then it is decided, Thomas declared. We implement the human protocol. All of it. The following year was chaos. Every species worked frantically to prepare. Hidden colonies were established on remote worlds. Seed ships were built in secret shipyards. Information was encoded, stored, and distributed. Military forces trained together despite ancient rivalries. Margaret barely slept. She traveled from world to world, helping coordinate, answering questions, solving problems. Everywhere she went, aliens asked her the same thing, will this work? And every time, she gave the same answer, I do not know. But it is better than giving up. 18 months after the first warning, the silence reached the outer colonies. 3 systems went dark in a single day. Then 5 more. Then a dozen. Margaret stood in the war room with the other commanders. They watched the displays as the darkness spread. It is faster than we calculated, General Marcus said grimly. How long until it reaches the core systems? Robert asked. 6 months. Maybe less. Are we ready? Shell looked around the room at the assembled species. We have done everything we can. 30,000 hidden colonies. 5,000 seed ships. Information distributed to 1 million locations. Every species working together. And if it is not enough? Grace asked. Margaret looked at her alien friends. In the past year, they had become more than colleagues. They had become something like family. All of them working together, different species united by the simple desire to live. If it is not enough, Margaret said slowly, then our descendants will try again. That is what humans do. We fail, we learn, we try again. And we keep trying until we succeed or until the universe itself ends. That is a long time to be stubborn, Thomas observed. Yes. But we have practice. The silence came 4 months later. It swept through the galaxy like a wave of darkness. Worlds went silent. Ships vanished. Cities died. But this time, it was different. Hidden colonies survived, their technology signatures too small to notice. Seed ships escaped into deep space, carrying the future with them. Information preserved in 1,000,000 secret places remained intact. And scattered across 1,000 worlds, small groups of survivors emerged from bunkers and shelters, ready to rebuild. The silence lasted 3 years. When it finally passed, moving on to some other galaxy, some other set of victims, the damage was immense. Half the population dead. Countless worlds dark. Entire civilizations reduced to remnants. But remnants still lived. 500 years later, the Galactic Council met again in a rebuilt chamber. The faces were different, the species had changed, but the purpose remained the same. A young human ambassador named James stood before the council. Behind him hung banners representing every species that had survived. Earth's banner hung alongside the Krell, the Vextari, the Luminoids, and dozens of others. 5 centuries ago, James said, our ancestors faced extinction. They survived because they learned something important. They learned to plan for failure, to adapt without shame, to work together despite differences, and most importantly, to refuse to give up. He gestured to the banners. Every species here exists because of the human protocol. Because we chose survival over pride. Because we were willing to hide, to run, to do whatever was necessary to keep living. A Vex-3 counselor stood. The humans taught us more than survival techniques. They taught us stubbornness. They taught us that persistence is not weakness. That adapting is not surrender. That sometimes you win by refusing to lose. Another representative spoke up. The silence may return in another 50,000 years. What will we do then? James smiled. It was the same smile Margaret had worn 5 centuries before. Determined. Defiant. Unbreakable. We will be ready. We will have 50,000 years to prepare. 50,000 years to become even harder to kill. And if the silence comes again, it will find not one species that refuses to die, but dozens. All of us together, all of us stubborn, all of us human in the ways that matter. Human in the ways that matter, the council repeated together. Outside the station, Earth turned slowly in the darkness. On its surface, cities glowed with light. In orbit, ships came and went. And hidden across the galaxy, in caves and bunkers and secret colonies, children learned the old stories. Stories of survival. Stories of persistence. Stories of how humanity taught the galaxy to be immortal.